like to offer all of you youngsters out there, though, is to remember that why we, of all the people on this earth, are the ones who wear this uniform, who deploy to the places that are ugly and unfriendly, and who do the things that no one else will do. And it's not just because we rock tech school or whatever, and it's not just because we were distinguished graduates from ROTC, and it's not just because we're almost as good looking as our spouses. But what it is because we know and we understand the why of whatever it is we're doing. Unique in our world, our allies. We and our allies understand the why of what we're doing, even at the lowest level, and that shows through every time. Because when you know the why, you will also understand what that one main thing is that you cannot, must not fail out. So I'm going to tell you some stories, because God knows I can't speak in public and make this stuff up myself, so I have to tell some stories. Javi, you taught me the joy of telling stories. So the first, and a couple of them I've had to change to keep them in the unclassified world, so just bear with me, but the points are essentially the same. So first of all, Iraq. F-16s from my Air Guard squadron deployed to enforce an Iraqi no-fly zone in Operation Southern Watch. The rules of engagement, logically enough, required that our fighters positively know that someone was an enemy before they would line up to shoot. And they had to do that either by seeing them, or they had to use some fancy onboard equipment that we had on our fighters in those days. Of course, the F-15 is much better at it, as General Pierre will tell you. But we would use that equipment to maybe tell somebody was a bad guy from way far away. We'd want to do that so we could shoot them before they could shoot us. Yeah, but the problem was, as early model F-16s, our ID systems almost never worked. Usually forcing our guys to fly all the way to the target to see them before they could identify them. And that whole time, these fighters are in range of the enemy's missiles. So imagine these guys shot. They're over there in Iraq. A couple of combat rookies. When their usually awful systems announced that a high-altitude airplane coming right at them was a MiG-23, they verified it twice. They'd never, ever seen that before, not even in training. I don't even think they programmed that into the simulator, for crying out loud. But the sudden reality of having met all the criteria to shoot an airplane at long range actually stunned these rookies. All they had to do was push the red button, and an enemy's existence would end in under a minute. But this is the joy of it. Something wasn't right. Among other things, the target didn't turn directly toward our guys, and didn't lock them up with a missile radar, indicating he was about to fire. And many folks would say, hey, that's an easy win against a clueless enemy, right? Push the button, get it over with. But against all the doctrine, and despite the radio from headquarters going off in their heads, you're clear to fire, clear to fire, clear to fire, they didn't. They waited, because they didn't feel threatened, even though they couldn't be sure that an inbound missile wasn't already on the way to kill them. God, it would have been so easy to shoot. Until they broke through that last layer of clouds, though, and they saw not a MiG-23, but an airliner full of 453 innocent passengers. Imagine if they'd shot. If they shot that airliner down, our strategic partnerships in the area, gone. Our enemies would have thrown parties, and probably my two pilots would have been found to be at fault somehow. But at that moment, their ranks were way bigger than their actions, were way bigger than their ranks, because they knew the main thing, the whole point of why we were there is to project the U.S. as a fair and credible player in the region. And the means to do so was to keep Saddam from using his own air force to kill his own people. These guys acted brilliantly. Our job was not to kill civilians in an airliner that maybe broke a rule. Our job was to make the U.S. look like a proud and credible player. These guys are brilliant. The lead was a major, and the wingman, the guy who actually would have been doing the shooting, was a junior captain. Youngsters, children. So the question to you is, does this Air Guard have guys like Stoley and Richter who would make the impossible right choice, facing impossible risks? Damn straight, you absolutely do. And I'm going to tell you a couple stories to prove it. So first, let's take the 262's Tech Sergeant Jonas Cavalli. He deployed to Operation Enduring Sentinel, where the U.S. uses these encrypted SATCOM nodes to remotely control these $32 million MQ-9 Reapers to put the hurt on some people who really need to have the hurt put on them, who are threatening either us or our allies in the Pakistan, Afghanistan area. And the U.S. looks like a reliable ally when we kill the right bad guys. And I know that sounds awful to say, but we are warriors after all.
We look like credible allies when we kill the right guys, protect the other right people, and we look stupid when we needlessly crash to things, right? So now imagine you're in a movie theater, right? You're in a Marvel movie, and where a Reaper is diverted from the European area all the way into CENTCOM, where no one can figure out where to find or even how to upload this stuff into the Reaper so that they can control this thing before it runs out of its last few remaining gallons of gas and lands it safely on the ground. Everybody's panicking and crying and waving their arms and gnashing their teeth until our camo's Cape hero swoops into the AOC. He somehow hacks into the dark web to find and upload the crypto, somehow hacks it into the right ground station, links it up to the Reaper, then watches calmly smoking his cigar while it lands a few minutes later with 2 gallons of gas left. Well, he said he was just doing his job. You know, the one that he hadn't been trained for? The one that he wasn't equipped to do? And the one he'd never done before? But from the comfort of his own chair, if you can call it stool in an AOC somewhere, comfortable, he knew that the main thing, even as an NCO, he knew that the main thing was to make the U.S. look like it was the solid, reliable, smart, technologically savvy ally. And despite the unsolvable odds, he did that. He saved that Reaper, he made us look great. My hat's off to you, Jonas, wherever you are right now. Are you here, Jonas? Okay, well, hello, and congratulations. Thank you. So, speaking of movies, it turns out WADS. Where's WADS? It turns out WADS has its own star as well in Captain Brett Fox. You know, the sector uses radios and radars, you know, to see the airspace and communicate to anybody that tries to fly there. The coverage, though, still has holes, Juice. The coverage still has holes, however, and it would make the nation look stupid if 23 years after 9/11 somebody exploited those holes and attacked us. Decades in, nobody has been able to overcome the doctrinal obstacles and the technological obstacles to allow air defense systems like WADS to have mobile systems like the Oregon Air National Guard's 116th Air Control Squadron to connect their mobile stuff into the WADS thing so we can see everywhere. Well, enter Captain Brett Fox with a $4 modern relay, a bunch of ingenuity and persistence, and a little visit to a mobile communication band somewhere out in the middle of nowhere. And guess what? WADS can now partner with these deployable air control squadrons and block those holes and find anybody where they might want to hide. Huge win for the U.S. credibility as a nation. They can defend itself at home. I love it. He did that even though that somebody might point at him and say, this was your fault if it failed. He didn't care. He did it anyway. It was the right thing to do, and God bless him for making the U.S. look great. So another hero, of course, is the 141st. What is the 141st? The 141st Master Sergeant Reuben Wright. Reuben, I talked to him. Where are you? All right. So his aircraft generation equipment, or AGE team, deployed to Andersen Air Force Base, Guam, where 80 years ago my dad got a little shrapnel souvenir from our friends over there. And Guam is an absolutely critical Pacific power projection base. So they went there for 90 days to raise their deployment and employment skills by smoothly rolling into what was supposed to be a gold-plated, well-run operation. Not so much, right? Instead, they found disaster. You know, the resident AGE squadron had no idea where most of their stuff was. And the stuff they could find, most of it had been broken for months or more. I bet the aircraft could land there, but there weren't very many that were going to be able to take off out of there with that AGE equipment. Even worse, the local leadership kind of remained isolated in their offices, timidly reporting wrong statistics up the chain that they knew would be met with shrugs, and they did nothing. No one was willing to take a risk on anything to attempt to fix this massive readiness failure, until Reuben's team showed up. They found every piece of missing equipment, and they established 100% accountability. In just 90 massive days, they fixed 94% of the broken, missing equipment, achieving a rate that active duty had never achieved. And how did Master Sergeant Wright say they did it? Well, I don't quote. Forgive me if I get this wrong. What he said to me was, as leaders, we have to assign problem solving at the lowest level. We got to encourage it. We have to be ready for the mistakes that inevitably happen, and try not to kill the messenger. Too many are afraid of taking risks and will simply pass the buck up. if we make persistent problem solving at the airman level a part of our culture, we will find a way to win. Absolutely true. Because what Rubenstein knows and what all of you know is that sometimes that main thing is right there in front of you in your office or your shop or your cockpit or your whatever you are where our ASOB guys go. You know, it's going to be sometimes right in front of you. So our U.S. strategic imperative, to protect power forward was threatened because some folks are just too darn afraid to try, because they didn't want to be being blamed for that. But our Air Guards men and women showed them the way. God bless you. And so finally, another great story from the Joint Terminal Attack Controller, or JTAC, Hero World, from the 194th. Now, 194th, where are you? Hey, son. So you may recall in January, some Iranian-backed militias used a drone to attack a U.S. support site called Tower 22 in Jordan, killing 3 soldiers and injuring about 40 more. Army Air Defense personnel there mistook the drone, unfortunately, for a friendly aircraft that was supposed to arrive at the exact same time. And the drone, unfortunately, cut through the defenses. But our own Staff Sergeant Jean-Paul Gaillard, did I say that correctly? All right. He deployed to nearby Syria, just across the border there. A task force armadillo said, "Enough already." Not caring a whit that someone might try and blame him if his solution failed, he built from the ground up an inter-service set of airspace control measures to allow the Army defenders to know in real time who was friendly and who wasn't. Ain't gonna happen again on his watch. God bless him. Right from his foxhole or whatever that hooch is they're working in over there, he saw the main thing right in front of us to make sure it never happened again that the U.S. would take a major credibility hit by having any of its soldiers or any of its allies' soldiers be killed. And he didn't care if he got blamed for it if it did fail. A staff sergeant. God bless him, I love it. And there you have it, kids. Whether it's choosing to not shoot a missile, or saving a predator, or expanding our air defense network, or saving our power projection capabilities, or empowering the Army to confidently kill people who are trying to hurt us, our nation and our allies can absolutely, positively count on all of you in the Air National Guard and our friends from Canada and Thailand and Malaysia to pay attention what matters strategically by acting courageously locally. Commanders, listen up. Because somewhere there's a senior airman, probably in this room right now, that one of these days is going to come up to you and say, "Yeah, but what about this?" And when you listen to her, she'll save the nation's strategic standing in the world because she had the courage to stand up. God bless you. Bless you all. I am so darn proud of all of you. Good night.
Thank you, General Gruver, for those inspiring words. At this time, General Welsh would like to present a token of his appreciation to General Gruver.
Ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy a short intermission before we announce this year's winners. Use this time to use a facility or refresh your beverage. Nominees and sword cordon, please gather outside in the lobby. Let's go ahead and do that now.
Recording? How you doing?